Hello. How's everyone doing out there? Yeah, oh good, I love it. It's an enthusiastic crowd. So I want to know, did any of you guys get burned by the lava out there? There's a lot of lava in Austin. Do you guys have any idea what I'm talking about? Did anyone used to play lava when they were a kid? Anybody? Yeah. So I loved the game Lava. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's when kids do everything they can to not step on the ground. It's a great example about how play is not about just simplifying things, because the simplest thing is to just walk on the ground. But kids will do something that's actually more complex and playful and that aids in their development. So I love playing Lava, but I admittedly haven't played it a lot in recent years until I realized that my kids are playing Lava. So I have two little ones, and what really blows my mind is that I never told them about Lava. I never taught them the rules, but this is just the way kids play. It's natural for them to do this because kids see the world much differently than we do as adults. So we will see things like pavement, and we don't even think twice about it. It's just there. It's something we walk on. But kids, their eyes open to everything, and they're always constantly pushing the boundaries and trying to figure out, what can I do with this? How can I use it in a different way? How can I make my own world out of it? And in that way, play is really about bringing meaning to the mundane in a magical and joyful way. It's something that play does really, really beautifully. So a lot of us played as kids, and we can remember that. But the question I want to also ask is, how do you play today? And for a lot of adults, this can be a tricky question because it's not something that adults naturally do. We aren't always given permission to play. And if you think about it the way I just defined it in terms of play being a way to make meaning out of the world, it doesn't make sense that we stop playing because I don't know about you, but I don't fully understand the world. In fact, it's gotten more complex in the last couple of years. And so knowing that, could play still be part of our lives? Is play a way that we can continue to make meaning and understanding in the world that we have around us? So one thing I always like to do when I get in front of a new crowd is ask the question of, what do you think of when you hear the word play? Just take a second to think to yourself. And usually when we talk to people, some of the words we hear back are kids, toys, happiness, recess. We get the occasional puppy thrown in there. And this is all true, and it's all wonderful. It's part of the reason I like play. But this is just skimming the surface. And if you go deeper, play is much more powerful, and there's so much more you can do with it. So I've always been obsessed with play. This is a picture of me turning my grandparents' door frame into a climbing gym. And this was making it my own personal playground. And while a lot of people grew up and they went on to serious jobs, I just couldn't see myself doing that. I liked play too much. And so while I gave it a go, I interned for 2 summers in aerospace. But once I graduated from college, I couldn't see myself going back to sitting in front of a CAD machine over and over again. So I went and decided, hey, someone's got to make toys. Why don't I join the toy industry? So I did that, and I traded in designing satellites for designing glow-in-the-dark galaxies that I could create and live in and have fun in and imagine. Since then, I've moved on, and I've been at IDEO for the last 10 years or so. And IDEO, if you don't know it already, is a global design firm. It is known for working with everyone from Fortune 500 companies to startups and across all industries. So we've probably touched something that you've interacted with in the last week or so. But I didn't come to IDEO for the portfolio. I came to IDEO because the first time I saw it, it looked fun. And people looked like they were playing. They're having a really, really good time. So while I started at IDEO and did consulting to start with, I did projects across education and consumer products. I eventually found myself gravitating back towards toys. And the really great thing about IDEO Palo Alto is it's the home to our toy lab. We're the only location that has a toy invention studio. And this toy invention studio has been around for 20+ years. We invent toys, and we take it into larger toy manufacturers who we then license the concepts to. The really interesting thing about toys is that the prime reason that you have a toy is to bring joy and to bring play. And if you can't do that, you don't have a successful product. The other thing is we market at one of the most choosy customers out there. Kids will tell it to you straight, and if you don't get it right, they'll put you to the side and they won't play with you again. So you really have to get it right. And so we found that over time, while we've gotten to be really great at toy invention, we're experts at that, we've also become experts in play. And we've come to really respect play and understand what it is. We've come to see that play is deeply embedded in our DNA. And it's not just human DNA, animals play as well. So animals, young animals will play as a way to start learning skills. They will play in a safe environment so that later on, when they're in a dangerous situation, they know what to do. They've built up the strength and the agility. It's kind of like lava, although hopefully none of you get put in a situation you actually are risked, your risk is to actually fall in lava. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But what lava does do is that it helps you build up that agility. It helps you build up coordination. It helps you build up problem solving. And those are all really important skills that we'll use in the future. And luckily, a lot of people are catching on to this. So people recognize now that play is important. It helps kids develop creativity, curiosity, risk-taking. It also builds up empathy because we're dealing with other people or we're role-playing, so we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes. There's camaraderie because there's often a social component to it. And it builds our confidence. And I love seeing play being emphasized for kids. It's fantastic. There's more chances for recess, longer recesses, and also play-based preschools. But I'd love to see more focus on giving adults permission to play and having play move into areas that aren't just toy-related. So over the last couple years, I've developed a new group within our toy lab called Design for Play. And what we do is we take that expertise that we've developed in the toy industry and we take it to the other industries where we haven't often been given permission to play, but where we really, really need it. So think about things like finance that we're afraid of, or healthcare where it's really confusing. How can we make a difference there? And so while we know that play is really great at designing for joy, there's some other areas I think play is especially really great at designing for. And I want to talk about 3 of those today. So for one, I kind of touched on this already, but play is really great for designing for meaning. And what I mean by that is that often when we are told to learn science and math, we are faced with formulas and equations and inclined planes. And I don't know about you, but for me in middle school, it didn't make a lot of sense. It didn't really relate. I learned the material to pass the test. I didn't learn it because I was passionate about it. Now, think about if you're in middle school and you're also in a low-income neighborhood. This might be something you relate to even less. And this is a problem. There's all this emphasis on STEM. And the Verizon Foundation came to us, and they really wanted to figure out how could we change this paradigm. How could we get kids excited about STEM? And so this is a project that we did with them, and it's recently launched. But it's the Verizon Explorer Lab. And this is a mobile classroom that pulls into parking lot after parking lot and visits schools and gives them an amazing experience that they can embed themselves in. So you may guess that this isn't your ordinary bus. And that's true, because when you get inside, it's this immersive experience. And you find yourself on a space shuttle, and you start in the parking lot, but then you blast off, and you end up on Mars. And what's cool about this is it doesn't start with the formulas and the equations. It starts with a reason why. It gives you context for why you want to learn science and math. And that's what gets kids excited about STEM. So you get on, you blast off, and then you get a message from the command center that says, hey, the Curiosity rover is lost, and we need your help to find it. So this is something galvanizing, and it's empowering, and the kids want to dive into it. They now have a reason for learning this. So with play, one thing to know is a process is just as important as the outcome. So where you might learn science and math before, and I remember doing this myself, I learned to get the answer, and then I'd check it against the back of the book, like, yeah, I got it, and I'd move on. But what the bus does is it's not as much about the end answer. It's more about asking the questions along the way. It's about that process of discovery. So just like maybe when you were young and you played with building blocks, and it wasn't about what the tower was at the end, you didn't leave that forever, you probably built it, and the next thing you did was just knock it over and start again. So it was really about that process and the building itself and figure out, can you top your skills from last time? Can you build a better tower? Can you do something better? It wasn't about the end product. And the Explorer Lab really builds off of that as well. So it has a process, and it starts off easy, and then it gradually adds on the complexity. It kind of creates a state of flow. So in this example, you start off, you have your rover, you name it, you design a flag for it, and then you deploy it onto the surface of Mars. You push it onto these larger screens where it joins rovers that the rest of your classmates have designed. And then it just lets you explore. So what's really interesting is that we had the client in, and we shared this with them, and these are adults. And they looked at it, and they're like, what are we supposed to do? Where are the instructions? And we're like, OK, now think like a middle schooler, because it's very different when you bring kids onto the bus. They don't ask what the directions are. They just start tapping until something happens, and they look for the reactions, and they go. And by doing that, it's not about just learning what the end answer is. They're learning something beyond the right answer. They're learning what doesn't work. They're finding other solutions, sometimes solutions we didn't even think of. And that's an interesting opportunity for innovation and for creativity when you give an opportunity like this where it's very, very open and people can explore. So it's through these intriguing narratives and providing kids an active role to play that play has that power to really awaken our intrinsic desire to explore, discover, experiment, and ultimately find meaning that we can own intrinsically, that we feel is really important, and we know why we know it and why it's important for us to know it. So I'm guessing you might want to know more about what this experience is. So I have a little teaser for you, so you can feel like you're on the bus yourself.
Are we alone in the universe? Is there life on other planets? Explorers have been asking these questions since the beginning of time. Today, you'll be joining that grand tradition of space exploration.
Explorer Lab. It's now your job to locate curiosity and its tools. To do that, you will need to deploy a unit of rovers and log any evidence of life you find along the way. Explorers, do you accept your mission?
So really excited about the work the team did on this. It's an amazing experience. If it comes to a school near you or there's some opportunity to see it, it's really great to experience it firsthand because the video can only do it so much justice. So the Explorer Lab launched in January, and since then, it's reached 5 middle schools in the first 2 months and hit 833 students in those 2 months. It's now over 1,000 students. Of the students that were on it, in a 24% sample, 78% of the students were non-white, 54% were female. So it's reaching an audience that hasn't been as exposed to STEM in the past. And in surveys that they took after it, they found that 78% of the students had a stronger interest in completing high school, and 63% actually felt that they could succeed in these skills. And so immersing them in this experience can have a difference. So meaning, design for meaning is one area that we look at. Like another area that I really love talking about is design for loyalty. And I love talking about design for loyalty because often when people think about loyalty and play, they jump straight to this. They jump straight to points and rewards, and they associate it with gamification. And this is something that I like to talk about a lot because I hear this over and over again. And my message to you is that play does not equal gamification. And if that's not strong enough, it really does not equal gamification. Because even though games are fun, points and rewards are only one small part of it, and they're play mechanics that build on a foundation of play. And if you don't have that foundation of play, the points and rewards aren't buying you real loyalty. So think about it this way. Like on a personal note, if you have a friend that doesn't really like you that much, doesn't think you're that interesting, but they hang out with you because you give them presents, is that a relationship you want to nurture? Because you could keep giving them points and rewards, but if you take them away and your core experience isn't that great, they're going to leave. That loyalty is going to disappear really quickly. Or even worse, you continue to pour money into these rewards, and they figure out how to game the system. Because they don't like your process, they don't like what you do, but they want the rewards. So they figure out how to get to those rewards without actually patronizing your business. In contrast, let's look at something like Weight Watchers. And this is Aranza Savas. She's out of the Global Innovation Team. And we've worked with her very closely. What I love about Aranza is that she really believes in play, and she's trying to bring as much play as possible to Weight Watchers. Part of the reason she does this is because she went through the system herself. So she's been through it. She's been through the struggle to lose weight. And she knows how much negative emotion can be associated with it. She knows how tough that can be and what a challenge it is. And when it's like that, it's really depressing. When you focus on diets and you focus on the numbers on a scale, it's not something that's really sustainable, not something you really want to do day after day. So they build this whole play culture. And you'll see it in the meetings. And I was really impressed. I went there and I attended a meeting for research. And there was so much laughter. There was so much camaraderie. There was play, and that they were role-playing difficult situations and figuring out, how do we deal with this? And there was a lot of laughter because there was some really ridiculous solutions. But you have to start somewhere. And sometimes the ridiculous can be reined in and get you somewhere that's really, really meaty and useful. There's also a lot of celebration. So they celebrate as they reach their goals and they make progress towards that. Oprah doesn't always show up, but it really doesn't hurt that they have a spokesperson that's so outspokenly playful and really embodies that spirit. And people are drawn to play, right? They're not drawn to negativity. They're not drawn to depression. But if it's fun, people will come because we're wired for that. We like fun. It appeals to our emotions, and that's much deeper. So if loyalty is about deepening relationships, one question is, what kind of relationship do you want to have with your customers? What does it mean? And here they're saying, dieting, losing weight is hard, and we want to make sure this is fun and something that's easy to do. And so it might be somewhat difficult. If it's approachable and fun, that's better. And this has to be a long-term relationship. And I love that on their site they talk about some different strategies and how do you find exercise that makes sense for you. And this is one of the quotes they have on their page. It says, to start, think about what kind of movement you liked as a kid. Maybe it was swimming or walking wooded trails on Saturday afternoons. Picking an activity you truly enjoy and not putting too many expectations on yourself can help increase satisfaction and decrease any disappointment of not being able to stick with unrealistic schedules or goals. It comes down to something that's fun. And if you can do that, if you can find that fun, it becomes much more sustainable, and now it can be a lifestyle. Okay, so you might be saying, I started off saying that points and rewards, not positive, and you're like, well, isn't Weight Watchers all about points? So let's make a distinction. Yes, you got me. They do have points. But the difference is they're not extrinsic points. They're not an artificial structure that was layered upon an experience. The points directly relate to what their experience is. Points are a way for the members to see their progress towards their goals, a goal that they actually want to have, not a goal that the company has. And so in this way, the missions are aligned and they're moving towards that. More so, these points are empowering. So what Weight Watchers did was they took a process that's very rooted in science. It's actually very complex, and they turned into points that people can actually navigate and they can actually use themselves. And this is actually an area where I'm really excited about, where we're on this dawn of a lot of data. I mean, it can be kind of scary, which is good, right? Because I'm going to talk about it next, but play is great with dealing with intimidating subjects. And so play has the ability to take something that's complex. It doesn't run away from complexity, but it presents it in a way that's fun and engaging, that you want to take part in it. So how do you present data, or in this case, all the science behind food, and present it in a way that people feel empowered to navigate those points? And if you've met someone who's on Weight Watchers and navigating those points, it's really, really fun, because you can just see them strategizing and they're having fun with it. It's like watching someone play checkers or chess. We're like, okay, if I eat this now, then I can do this later. If I have more now and I totally splurge, what can I take from what I eat tomorrow? And by doing that, by having that feeling of empowerment, they also get really excited to share their wins. So that's part of it, like empowering people and giving them an active role to play. But also, when they're empowered, they're excited to tell their stories. So here is one member called Wait For It. Literally, wait for it, so don't wait for it. That's her name. And she tags Weight Watchers, and she posts pictures of how she plays with food. They're encouraged to play with their food. Here's some healthy meals that she's found, and they're gorgeous photos. They bring a lot of joy back to food, which food would be intimidating otherwise to someone who's trying to lose weight. But she's posting her wins, and she's finding a way to come back and support the community. And because she feels this way, and because she has play behind it, It's inspired her to do some of the storytelling. It's inspired her to step forward and turn a fan into a brand advocate. How do you help your fans actually tell your story for you? By giving them the story, making them feel like they own it. So another area where I really think play has a lot of possibilities is design for bravery. And this is one of my favorite play stories. It's not an IDEO story. It's from someone named Doug Dietz, who worked at GE Healthcare. And Doug designed MRIs for GE. And he was really proud of it. It was really well engineered, really well designed, great piece of medical equipment. But when he went to go witness it in action, he saw a mom and her child walk into the room. And the child was terrified. The mom was too, because the mom was watching the child and was just like, I don't want my child to go through this. And Doug was just heartbroken. He was like, what's going on? Why is this so scary? And he talked to the technician, and the technician told him, yeah, no, this is normal. This is what happens. We have to sedate 80% of children ages 3 to 8 who have an MRI. That's a lot of people. And it's no question, because I mean, this is intimidating. You walk in and there's a big white scary machine. And while it's scary for adults, if you're this low and you're looking up at it, it's even more terrifying. So Doug turned to play, and he created an entire adventure series of MRIs. And he has ones that look like a pirate ship. He has others that look like famous locations in San Francisco, which is a really sweet story about that, because when kids come to San Francisco for treatment, they don't get to go sightseeing like their brothers and sisters do. So how do you bring that experience to the MRI itself? This one's about camping, and it's awesome because when you come in, the MRI itself is a tent, and the bed is a sleeping bag. So there's a reason to get on and to be part of it. And the experience starts before you even end up here. It starts in the waiting room, where kids can design the room themselves. So there's a projector in the newest version of this MRI, and they can choose like what animals they want on there, what kind of sounds they want to hear. And so instead of being intimidating, not wanting to go to the room, they now find kids skipping and running to the room because they want to see the room that they created. They've now become part of that creation process, and it's completely reframed this experience in a way that's really amazing. So it can take these scary experiences and turn them into ones that are full of wonder and curiosity. And more so, it gives them surmountable challenges. So another thing is when the technician takes a child into the room, they will take them on a tour and bring them all around. And one of the things they see is a collection of squirrels in the corner. And the technician says, hey, so you're going to go in your sleeping bag and then go into your tent. If you hold really, really still and be very, very quiet, those squirrels might still be here when you get out. So the kids are like, oh, I want the squirrels to be here. And while it might have been really hard for them to stay still so that a machine could scan their brains, they get really excited about this because this is a challenge that they're excited about and something they can actually do. And so it's this heartwarming experience where they actually go in there and they get excited to do this. This is the team, and Doug Dietz is this gentleman right here. He's fantastic. He's amazing. Over the past few years, again, this is one of my favorite stories about play, so I tell it all the time. But for this, I was like, maybe I should get his permission before I show it at South by Southwest. So the thing about IDEO is everyone knows everyone in some way, so you send out a message, and they're like, oh, yeah, I know Doug. So I gave him a call, and he chatted for an hour and gave me so many details about this, and his excitement was so clear. And what was really great was that he shared some of the results. So these MRIs are across the country, and he recently had some numbers that came in from UPMC in Pittsburgh, and he found that the backlog for patients for MRIs had been reduced from 18 days to 0. So while there's huge human impact, and that's what we get excited about because the kids are now okay going and having these procedures versus being terrified, this is actually making business sense, because now instead of pulling kids in and having them struggle against you and taking all this time just trying to get them on the table, kids are coming in, they're doing it, and they're making it through the first time, so you don't have to rescan. The other thing is that number before where I said 80% of kids are sedated, that's gone down to 30%. That's pretty dramatic, and that's fantastic. The other thing Doug told me is that, yeah, they have this for MRIs, but they also do it for CT scans. And you don't want to have to rescan a kid with a CT scan because that's radiation, and that's really damaging. So how do you create these experiences where it makes it easier for everyone? And a really interesting side benefit, which I didn't know before I talked to them, was that they had this side bonus that the technicians got much more excited about their jobs too. So they went so far as to create this area where the technicians have to go in so they're not exposed to any other radiation or anything that's happening with the procedure, and they made it look like an RV. So now the technician can say, hey, I'll be in my RV, I'll be hanging out here. If you have any problems, I'll come back and I'll help you, but I'll be in the RV. So this is the script they're given. They're given some really loose guidelines on this is how you can tell the story, this is how you can engage a child, but they're loose guidelines, and that's on purpose, because this is an opportunity for the technicians to play too. And some of them get really into it. So some of them will go and they'll buy themselves ranger outfits, and they'll come in, they greet the kid in the waiting room, and they are in full role play mode, being these rangers, to take the kids through, and yeah, they just ham it up, and they have a really good time. And it's interesting because Doug even mentioned how at one point they had taken a group of technicians through who didn't usually work in the pediatric department, but for some reason their room wasn't available, so they took the technicians through. And then afterwards he got a phone call from the managing director who was there, and she's like, Doug, you're in trouble. He's like, oh no, what happened? What'd I break? What'd I do? And she's like, so we had these other technicians come through that don't usually belong to this room. 100% of those technicians reapplied to be put in the pediatric department, because this is an experience that really encapsulates why they came into medicine. They wanted to connect with patients, but so oftentimes the bureaucracy and the procedures get in the way. And now by doing this, by turning it to play, they can build that human connection. And this is a key part, and I think a lot of people who come to us for design work, they want to design for the end user, but they forget about the employees and how crucial that is, because the end customer experience is going to be influenced by the customer experience they receive. And so if your customer experience people aren't happy, that's going to show straight through. If you can create an experience that's great for your employees as well as for your end customer, then you have a winning combination, and it's going to end up being an even more powerful formula in the end. So those are 3 areas that I'm really excited about taking play further, and I'm always looking for opportunities. If you look at the inverse of what I just showed you, so there's design for meaning. So really, we look for things that are confusing out there. So what are the things that we just don't get that we feel like there'd be opportunity to have more meaning? There was design for loyalty. So where are areas where people don't feel connected to a brand or to a product, and how do we help create that relationship? And then this one was about design for bravery. So what are the things that we're afraid of? And it's not just kids that are afraid of things. There's so many things that our adults are afraid of too. I mean, just think about creating a will or having to put together a financial plan. That's all stuff that's really scary for adults too. So how can we apply play to make all those more intriguing and more engaging? So something else I feel really strongly about is that in order to design for play, you really have to play yourself. And that's a key part of it. It has to be part of your entire culture and how you operate your company. So a lot of people will say that play is the opposite of work. We don't feel that way at all. We think that play can and should actually be part of your work. How do you integrate play into your work all the time? And when I say I have fun at IDEO, sometimes people think about this. And yes, we throw really fun parties. People go all out. It's usually a costume party. And you can only imagine what happens when you throw a bunch of designers into a costume party. It's highly competitive. And so yeah, it doesn't hurt to have a great party, but it's also about this. It's about what we do on a day-to-day basis. And this is Brennan Boyle. He started the Toy Lab. He also teaches at the Stanford D School and teaches a class called From Play to Innovation. And it's one of those classes a lot of people sign off for because they feel like, this is an easy class, we can goof off. And they come out of it realizing it's a transforming experience. Coming into this room, I met someone who's doing another talk elsewhere, and she's an entrepreneur, has her own business. And she's like, oh, you're at the Toy Lab. Do you know Brendan? I took his class. And so it's really impactful. It's helping people move further. And this is an example where he's talking to a number of entrepreneurs, and he's having them draw portraits because he's trying to get across the idea that in order to have your idea go further, you have to be careful, or you have to feel comfortable putting it on paper and sharing it with other people. You can't feel self-conscious. You can't be apologizing for your drawing. You just have to do it. You just have to put it out there, and that's really important. And so Brennan's a total master of play, and I learned a lot from him. And so this is an exercise I really like that he does as well. And so for this, and I promise this is very, very painless, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine yourself blasting off, going to the moon, and then coming back. Don't go yet. Wait for the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Blast off. When you get back to Earth, feel free to open your eyes again. See if a lot of people have made it back already. We still have a few people out in space. If you're not back already, let's come on back. So it's great. I love to see when people are out there for a little bit longer, because this is one of the activities that, just to help with the imagination a little bit, we do with kids as well as with adults. And what we find is adults go, they blast off, they go around the moon, and they come back. Because as adults, we're programmed to be very task-oriented. We figure out what we have to do, and we get it done. Kids, on the other hand, they go a little bit broader. So a couple questions here. How many of you took off to the moon and were in some sort of space shuttle? Cool. Anyone just kind of go Superman style like that? For those of you, did you guys wear a spacesuit? Yeah, we got some of them. No? Oh, not afraid of burning up on reentry? Awesome. Cool. How many of you actually landed on the moon for a little bit? Nice. How many of you met an alien? And how many of you maybe wandered and explored other parts of the solar system? So awesome. That's why you guys are at this talk, because you guys love play. So what we find is kids spend a lot more time diverging. They love to go wide. So when you do this exercise with kids, you really have to work hard to pull them back to Earth, because they're out there, they're doing loops around the moon. A lot of them stop, they're colonizing Mars, they're meeting alien friends. A lot of them end up on Mars for some reason, and then you have to rein them back in. But being able to diverge is such an important skill. In life, and we see this with a lot of clients, is they'll come in and they're like, we know what we want to make. Can you guys just make that? Like, how much does it cost for that? Skip the research, skip this other stuff. Just go straight to telling us what the end product is and help us make that really spectacular. But what we found is that our process is much stronger when we take the time to diverge and converge. So in inspiration, it's about going really wide and finding lots of sources of inspiration, whether that be talking to different users and a huge variety of users, whether it be going out and finding analogous experiences where we look for something that's not directly in the field, but something that we can learn from. So the example that we use quite a bit that I really love is a team that went to go redo the ER experience, the emergency room experience. And what they did is they went to go see a pit crew at a NASCAR race, because they were thinking, who's another group of people who have random emergencies coming in, they have to diagnose it really quickly, they have to fix it and get the person out. And so they learned a lot from this NASCAR pit crew. They learned how it's great to have redundant tools. It's great to know what the biggest issues are and have packages already wrapped up that include all the things you would need to treat that illness. And so we learned by going wide on inspiration. On ideation, we go wide in brainstorming, and in implementation, that's all about making prototypes and learning from those prototypes. And so, design thinking is pretty big. It's been out there. It's everywhere. But have you ever thought about it from the context of play? Because one part is that part of diverging and how it gets you to new and different places and gets you somewhere creative, just like kids who look at the pavement and see it as so much more than what we see it as. And so the other thing is we like to link each part of the design process to a play behavior. So if you look at inspiration, this is a lot like role play. And if you look at ideation, it's very similar to exploratory play. Implementation is a lot like constructive play. And I go a little bit deeper into what each of these mean and how we benefit from it and how you can think about this in a really playful way. So first up is inspiration and role play. Kids are great at this. So this is, again, my son. This is when he was a lot younger. And they put on costumes, and they just go to action. They pretend to see what it's like to go through these different experiences. And we do this, too. We like to put ourselves in the shoes of the user. So this is one designer called Christian Samsarian. And this was also for an emergency room project. And instead of just guessing and trying to figure out what is it that is really important in the emergency room, he actually checked himself into the emergency room, and he took a camera with him. And he kept a camera right at eye level so that everything he saw got recorded on the camera. And so the team was really excited. They all gathered, and they're like, all right, what are we going to see? What insights can we find? And when they looked at the video, they saw 3 hours that were mostly this. It was a lot of ceiling. And you could feel the emotions as you're carted around. You have something wrong. You might not necessarily know what's wrong with you. And you look up, and you're just being wound from one hallway to another, and you're just looking at the ceiling. How scary is that? And so when they realized this, they realized that the ceiling was a prime place for signage, so that you could actually see where you're in this situation, where you're going, and have some say of what's happening to you. And that's something that just kind of fills you in and helps ease some of the fear at least a little bit. So another area that we see play with ideation is exploratory play. And my kids get equal play time, so here's one of my daughter. So she's also a lot older now, too. But it was amazing that she saw me vacuuming and saw this not as a way to clean the house, but as a perfect balloon levitation device. And it was awesome. So next time you use your vacuum cleaner, if you have one that blows air up, see what else it can do. You might be amazed, and you might find something really fun and joyful. Similarly, this is what we try to do when we brainstorm. So when we brainstorm, it's also about how do you think wide, how do you think about new applications, and the crazier, the better. And brainstorms are one of the few places that we actually have rules at IDEO. And one of the big rules is to go wide, go for as many ideas as possible. And in that process, not to have any judgment. So anything goes. You want wild, wild is good. And part of the reason is what's shown here. And this was a diagram done by our friend Dave Patnick, who's at another design firm. But what he had to say, I know that text is a little bit small, was that out of 100 ideas, the first 60 ideas produced 5 that were actually new or different. The next 20 produced nothing but laughter. Those were the ridiculous ideas. That's a little dip right there. And then ideas 80 to 100 produced another 10 that were amazing. And that first part, you're just kind of trying, you're struggling to come up with ideas. You're still trying to come up with the best idea. Once you get into that ridiculous phase, you've just broken the ice. And then what comes after that is pure magic. And one reason that we think this happens is because when you're trying to come up with one idea, there's a lot of pressure. And you're trying to come up with the right idea. When you can come up with a lot of different ideas, that frees you up a little bit. It lets you be creative, and it lets you take a little bit more risk. It creates that safe environment where you feel like you can really jump in and try something new and different. And that's when you get to break through ideas. So the next area is implementation and constructive play. And the average first grader spends about 50% of their time in constructive play when they're awake. And that's amazing. They're always working with their hands. They're always building. We gradually lose that over time, and it's something that we love to do. We called it building to think. And it's about getting our ideas tangible. It's about drawing it first, which with a sketch, we know the picture's worth 1,000 words. But we take it to the next level, because we think a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures. And it becomes really real, something you can hold, something you can build, and it gets you somewhere faster. So this is one example of a project where we're looking at doing long-haul flights, and what could that look like? What could the seating arrangement be? And at one point, someone's like, what if we created beds and people could lie down, and wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be great? And so the team just pulled out some chairs, pretty simple. It didn't take very long, and they set them up. And they realized very quickly that this was a little bit awkward. So having someone directly above you, especially if it's like your boss, not exactly something that you'd want to do. And so they learned this by just quickly prototyping it in this way. So it doesn't have to be something that you're 3D modeling and that you're 3D printing. Just act it out and see what happens. And in doing so, this team learned very quickly that this was maybe not the path to go down, and they shifted very, very quickly into something else. So now that I've kind of talked about some of these areas where I feel like there's really great opportunity for play, and talked about how play is also a critical part of the process, When you hear the word play, what do you think of now? And is it different from where we were at the very beginning of the talk? I hope that coming away from this, you see plays much, much more. It's about that engagement. It's about connection. It's about understanding. And it's about comfort, as well as being about delight and play and fun. We don't want to lose any of that. That's all still very important to play. And toys are still very important. But we can't keep play bottled up in that one area because it's important to have that spread across everything else. We really, really need play. And before going to questions, I want to leave you with one more story. So I had a friend who I was talking to, and we were talking about play, and she was telling me about her mother's last days. And she was saying, my mother was a really, really dignified lady. Even in the end, she refused to use a bedpan, but it was really hard to get her out of bed. And so this was a struggle until one day we realized that as a child, she really loved music, and she really loved dancing. So whenever we tried to get her up to use the bathroom, we'd put the music on, and we would waltz her to the bathroom. And that made it so much easier. So play isn't just for kids. It's something we hope will be with you for your entire lives, all the way to the end of our days. And we can start now by really engaging in play and starting to play again. And I want you to start today. When you go out there, I really want you to watch out for that lava. I don't want any of you burned. I want you all to get home safely. And just, be sure to play and get inspired by the kids out there as well. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, there's a mic in the middle of the room. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hi. Do you have any advice for bringing play into perhaps more like culturally serious organizations? Anything tactical that we can try?
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Yeah. So what happens when you don't jump into an organization that's already naturally playful? And I admit, IDEO has an advantage in that David Kelly started IDEO, and he's still around. He started IDEO because he wanted to work with his friends. None of his friends thought this would last very long. They figured, hey, this is awesome. We'll do this for a couple of years. We'll disband. We'll do something else. It'll all be fun and good. And it lasted. A lot of them are still there over 30 years later. And they have brought play to the table because they came. And one of the things we talk about are play postures. We work a lot with Dr. Stuart Brown. And he is part of the National Institute of Play. And he talks about how if you have the proper play behavior, you come to the table and you engage everyone else, which is a little bit different. I think a lot of organizations are still very hierarchical, and it's important to have status, and people want to come, and they want to show that they're the smart ones, they have the right ideas. Because IDEO started with a bunch of friends, they didn't want to pull that power play on each other, so they came, and they come, and they're ready to engage. I just had breakfast with one of our neuroscientists, because we have neuroscientists at IDEO too to help us understand the medical part. And he says that when he goes in to talk to patients, the first thing he does is he sits down, he kind of hunches forward, he doesn't sit back, and he goes like this. And he's like, I didn't notice until someone pointed it out, but what that does is that he's showing he's listening, he's trying to make a personal connection, and when he claps, he's directing attention to his hands, showing that he has nothing there that's going to get in the way of their conversation. And it just says, okay, now let's start. I'm listening to you. I'm ready. So even subtle behaviors like that really help. Some of the other things are just creating a really inspirational environment where everything is celebrated, even things outside of work. So every Tuesday, we have what we call Eat This. And it's primarily for IDEOers. Every once in a while, we have Eat All This, where clients can come and join us as well. And it's for sharing what we learn on projects. So we learn from each other, which adds to that humbleness because we're constantly in awe of what our coworkers do. But we also share our latest vacation or a really great honeymoon and what can you learn from that. But it helps us all be curious and helps us understand that we don't know everything and there's always something else out there to pique our attention. We also encourage outside passions. So if you come and visit us, which I encourage you to, you can go ahead and reach out. You can find me through this, or I'm also Michelle at IDEO with 2 L's. not because I was all important, but because Emily was already taken when I got there. but it's nice to have Michelle at IDEO. And you will notice that in our lobby, we showcase a lot of our top products, but you'll also see this giant flower, the Bloomin' Lumen. And the Bloomin' Lumen is this Arduino-driven flower that opens up when you're under it, and it flashes different LED colors. It was something that some of our designers created for Burning Man. And it was designers who were just passionate about making, so they did this in their after hours, they did it on the weekends. IDEO is fine with letting them use our shop and our resources because they love the idea of making and building. And so they encourage this, and they even showcase it right in the lobby alongside everything else because it's so important to show that. So those are some little things that you can go back and do right away, like how do you start bringing this forward? The other one I would say is we very consciously design our layout. So we don't have carpeting. We pulled it all up a little while ago, and our space was formerly an auto dealership. So the bottom is just tile and hard floor. So it doesn't matter if you spill your coffee on it or if you make a mess. It actually encourages making and just going out there and taking risks. So that's part of it as well. And then we also make sure that there are places people can run into each other for that natural cross-pollination, including having something we call a tech box so that people don't hoard gems at their desk. They put them all in one space. And that tech box has things that are cool materials, cool mechanisms that we hope that people will go to and learn about. So if there's something that's really awesome in the toy space, they take that into the medical device space where they might not have seen that innovation before, but it's totally proven in toys already. So yeah, hopefully that helps and you can try a few of those things. Yes.
Hi, really love the talk. I think my question's a little bit related to this. How do you get people into the mode of playing? So I used to work in the federal government, and there's a lot of trainings you have to take. One of the trainings was on like how to spot suspicious characters in the workplace, and they had us play a game for it. And I remember when we were sent the game being like, this feels so like not like we're not like this doesn't feel like the right format for this thing. And I feel like, but I remember once we got into it, everyone remembers the training, they did it, so I think it was effective, but it was that onboarding process. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how you onboard people to games and how you break down that sort of wall of feeling like this is not the right format to be talking about this?
Yeah, so we really believe in flow. You can't just have people dive into the deep end. It's really, really hard. And so you've got to lower the risk barrier first. You have to create that safe environment. So how do you do that? How do you ease people into it? So there are easier exercises. The one where you blast off to the moon is pretty easy that you can do. That you kind of see it in your own head. You don't necessarily have to voice anything out loud. So starting easy like that's great, and then you kind of layer it on little by little. Like Chick Set Me High's whole theory of flow has you start with something little, and then as that gets easy, you bring on the next lesson. It's also like games where you kind of level up and you keep going. So, so how do you do that? The Mars bus, the Explorer Lab, is another example where you start by just naming your rover and creating a flag, and then get to the point where you're actually swapping out parts. So, yeah, how do you don't push it because that frightens people off right away. But how do you approach it with some simple games that maybe bring about laughter? We've done things like creating a love letter or breakup letter first to your own product. So you'll do like a Mad Lib breakup letter, and you'll say, we had such a great relationship, I used to love you for this, but the relationship's turned sour. I've seen this happen, and I wish you did this better. And secretly on the side, I've been seeing our competitor, and this is why I love the competitor so much. And it's really interesting to see what people talk about when you reframe it in that way, and it's fun, it's playful. We play like really sad love music in the background too. So there's some cheesy things that get people into it, like love bites, love hurts. It's really great. Music helps a lot. So yeah, just putting that on is great. But also, like, are there just places that you can get people to interact and break it down and help everyone see everyone on a level playing field? So improv exercises, and some of them are really easy, are another way to do that. And when you see the CEO of the company doing alongside everyone else, you realize that everyone's not as good at everything. Like, you notice too, that CEOs in general sometimes don't know everything when you pay really close attention. But when you force them into an uncomfortable space, but everyone's in that, and you see everyone else doing it as well, that works. And a lot of it's just modeling the behavior. So I mentioned Brendan before, huge mentor. Some of you out there know him. And he's freaking goofy. So when you do that play exercise, how do you define play at IDEO? Brendan's name actually comes up in that list quite a bit. And he shows us it's okay. Like, you can tell goofy jokes, and when we see that, it helps. But it's harder with tougher subjects. So how do you ease into it? What are some simple ways you can get people to start having that dialogue? But what comes to mind is the parable of the polygon, if you know that one. So in the parable of the polygon, they deal with segregation. Again, really, really tough subject. And also a story that overlaps quite a bit with artificial intelligence and data science, in that it starts with a very simple layout, and it's very playful, and it's like, you're in this town, and what are different characteristics, like what are the people that you like to hang out with, what are some that you don't want to do, and you start seeing all these data points starting to move, and before you know it, segregation's happened. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. And you learn about it, and you realize how some of your own personal biases can feed into this system. So I think that's really interesting where you tackle that, and that's just one example. So you can check out how that's done and see if that gives some inspiration as well. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle, and thank you. Amazing talk. I wanted to kind of follow up on this and ask a little bit about the keyword cloud, right? What the word play means for different people. And kind of follow up a little bit on the how do you bring that stuff into big, serious, quote-unquote, companies. I work for Capital One, and a couple of years ago, we did a research on why would people want to play, right? And it's seemingly not as straightforward as it sounds. We found out, at least in our small kind of research, that while the majority of people, more than 50%, are all into the engagement aspect of it and the process and just making connections, there's a smaller group of people who are all about the actual gratification, especially early gratification, and that's where probably the older, kind of all about badges and that kind of bullshit comes along. And then there's another group of people who are more about mastery. And I saw all of those keywords in there. So if you're trying to win actual stakeholders over, you'd probably want to appeal to what resonates with them directly. What kind of tactics would you recommend to pitch kind of all those aspects of play?
Right. So this is where the user research comes in. And I know Capital One is very big into this as well. But the foundation of IDEO is that we're a user-centered design company. So we go out and we go in-depth in our research. It's not about the quick quantitative survey. We get to the why. Our interviews are typically like an hour to 2 hours long, and we spend time with people, and we really listen to what they're saying. We might go in with some questions that we want answered, but we go off script all the time. It's just kind of like these are some things we're interested in, but we let people take us into winding paths that help us get to what is the right motivation for them. Like, is it about mastery? Is it about the social? What are the different areas that can get them into the game? And when we do that, it helps us figure out what's the right strategy. I mean, I think another key thing is not trying to appeal to everybody. That's really hard. If you can narrow to a specific user, it gets you much closer to understanding what's the right way to approach them. Because, yeah, play is still really broad, and we could do a whole nother talk on that. But what are the different types of play, and how do you use that to appeal to each type of person? So yeah, it really takes that upfront research and understanding who you're designing for, and then applying the right play to that.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for the talk. I really enjoyed it. So I think you have given lots of examples in incorporating play in designing people's experiences in the physical world. Can you talk about like how we can borrow some of the techniques in the experiential design into like designing digital products?
Yeah, that's a good question because we actually do a lot of digital. We've done a lot of apps in the past. We've done apps on our own. We've done apps with Fisher-Price. We've done apps with Sesame Workshop. And what I like to say is that we don't design for the technology. We, being in Silicon Valley, are very exposed to the different kinds of technology. We know what's out there, but we design for the experience. So we always start with what's going to resonate and what should the experience be, and then we figure out what's the right technology to tack onto that to make that experience come to life. So I'd say to really focus on that first and really understand what's the experience, how are you going to connect with someone, what's that meaning they want to get out of it, and what's their drive, what's their goal, how does it align with your goal, and then from there, what are the proper applications of technology, and it's not something that you just want to bolt on, but how is it something that supplements it in a way that makes sense? Something else we've been talking about at IDEO, everyone's talking about AI and artificial intelligence, and we've come out saying, yeah, we love AI, but we're calling it augmented intelligence because we think you can't take the human out. The human still has to be there. And we don't want to take jobs away. We want to just make people super people where they can do much more. So I think looking at that too with technology and just making sure it's something that empowers the user and keeps them moving forward. And that's where play is great. So how do you still make the person an agent of change? How do you give them tools that make them feel empowered? And how do you give them the feedback that shows that they're actually advancing and doing something good?
Thanks. Hi, Michelle. My name is Melinda, and I was emotionally moved by your talk because as a high school science teacher in a struggling urban school district, play is not part of the conversation at all. At the faculty level, we have struggled with retention, and at the classroom level, it's very little. It's very task-oriented. We need to get the kids ready for the test. And I see so many opportunities that I can take back to my campus. So what other play-focused innovations do you anticipate in education? What things could we look forward to in the 21st century play classroom? Let's bring play into high school.
Yeah. So I know I just talked about AI, and that's like a big talk here at South by Southwest right now. What's interesting about AI is hopefully it allows to more personalized learning. Which I'm very passionate about. My daughter is now in 1st grade, and she's at a school that's inquiry-based, and they do individual learning plans. They look to see where every child is, and then it's not about getting every kid to the end place, but it's about getting every child to advance at least a couple steps, no matter where you are in the process. And I think AI could definitely help with that, because once you have a way of actually understanding who the kids are, what levels that they're at, but beyond that, also what they're interested in, and what are their skill sets, so that we don't all get funneled in to become the same person. How does AI and data science, how does that start looking at, one child is really artistically inclined. This person's very analytical. This one likes dinosaurs, and this one can't get enough of just the natural world. Like, how does it start differentiating all of that? And then how can it cater to the different desires in a way that right now is so hard? Because I know that teachers are so constrained in their resources.
And do all that manually.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and my daughter's school has 2 teachers per classroom, and I've seen even how that really helps a lot. So the idea of AI is augmented intelligence could, I think, really come in handy here. Because how do you help you now have like 12 hands and be out there and really give people the attention they need, and also keep track of where kids are and help them advance at the rate that they should be advancing, and being passionate, following passions that they naturally have already.
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys all for coming. I hope you take play forth.